like to introduce Tamar from England, who has multiple sclerosis. Welcome, Tamar.
Hello.
Could you tell us, when were you diagnosed with MS?
I was diagnosed in February 2006.
And how old were you at the time?
I'd just turned 30, which is quite common for MS. I'd had glandular fever at age 17, and then the MS came out when I was around 30, which is quite common, I'm told.
So what symptoms did you have prior to being diagnosed?
Well, initially it was the September before, so September 2005. I came down with this mysterious bug that just left me extremely tired, and my depth perception went. I'd had trouble sort of reaching a door handle or stepping on a stair. I'd missed them, which was really odd. And I went to bed for a few days, and about a week later was fine again. I went to New York for a weekend, and by the end of that weekend I was absolutely exhausted, freezing cold, and had difficulty speaking. I spent the rest of the month in bed. Nobody knew what was wrong. They thought it was just a mysterious illness. And I just seemed to get better on my own. After about a month, I sort of perked up again, went back to work, absolutely fine. And then the following December, I woke up one morning with numb hands and feet. And I just thought it was poor circulation, which is something I'd always had. But by the next day, I had pins and needles all down one side of my body. So I went back to the doctor, and luckily had quite an astute GP who sent me for an MRI. And that was when I was diagnosed. So I was very lucky, really. I got a very quick diagnosis. I didn't have years of visiting doctors with mysterious symptoms, which I understand a lot of people do have. Yes.
So how did it affect you psychologically, being given the label of MS?
Well, it was a complete shock. We had, I wasn't expecting any kind of diagnosis. I went to get the results on my own. And just sort of said to work, I'm just going to get my results, I'll be back in an hour. And then, of course, I had this news, and I was completely blindsided by it. I had absolutely no idea that was coming. My maternal uncle had MS, but I didn't know what it was. He had a very different kind. He was sort of primary progressive, very ill from the beginning, and it totally overtook him. So that was scary, because that was my view of MS. It was just, oh gosh, I just saw a wheelchair and thought, oh no, that's it. So it was a complete shock. The first thing I did was go and buy a book on the subject, because I think informed is forearmed. I read about the different kinds of MS, and obviously at this stage we didn't know what kind it was. And I had a few months of sort of minor panic attacks and why me moments, and I had this house to run. I was the only one paying the bills. It was quite a shock, really. So it was a tough few months to begin with.
Yes.
And then obviously as I learnt more about it, and the doctors sort of came to the conclusion that it was relapsing remitting because it had sort of gone away on its own, and sort of had a more positive outlook. And as the years go by and I don't have any more relapses, and obviously with the LDN I'm feeling a lot more normal, I feel a lot more positive about it.
So how long did it take after your diagnosis to find LDN?
Well, I'd heard about it. When I was first diagnosed, I went onto the MS Society chat rooms, and that was really helpful at first, sort of hearing other people having the same problems, same difficulties, and getting advice. And I'd heard about LDN, but obviously at that stage I didn't really feel that I needed any medication. I wasn't put on any of the disease-modifying drugs because I wasn't ill enough for those. And so I sort of just mentally filed away this LDN for future reference. And then a few years later, I'd sort of had a few little symptoms here and there, which on their own weren't really a big deal, but then it was starting to, everything was happening at once, and I'd have a couple of days off of work every month. And at that point I thought, right, I need to do something. But I didn't feel I was ill enough for the disease-modifying drugs, and I didn't particularly want to get into taking those because you have to inject them, and if I wanted a family I'd have to come off them again, and I'd feel like I was relying on them and then have them taken away again. So I looked again into the LDN, and I found your website, and I contacted yourself, Linda, for some advice about whether it would be appropriate for me, and decided to go for it. So that was in March 2009 I started taking it, so sort of just over 3 years after diagnosis.
So did you manage to get a prescription on the NHS, or did you have to get a private prescription?
No, it had to be private. The NHS don't license it at all, which is crazy, really, because it's so cheap, but it's so helpful.
Well, there
but
are
no,
a
I
lot.
had to go through a private prescription, but that was relatively easy to get. The website's fantastic, has all the information you need.
But there are a lot of people that do manage to get an NHS prescription. It's down to the doctor if he's willing to prescribe it or not.
Okay.
On the NHS.
I did speak to my MS nurse at the time, and they said they don't prescribe it.
Right.
So I had
So,
to go private.
what did you notice? Did you have any initial side effects?
No, I didn't actually. I was expecting them. I had a couple of restless nights the first couple of nights. They do say that can be a problem, but it was only for sort of a couple of nights. But no real side effects really, no.
So how long did it take before you noticed some improvement?
It was a few months. I was sort of under the illusion to begin with that as soon as I took my first dose, everything would be fine. And then sort of realised, actually, no, you've got to let it get into your system and, give it time to work. So I would say it'd be sort of 3 or 4 months before the real change. There was a sort of a gradual improvement, and sort of about 3 or 4 months in, I thought, actually, I'm starting to feel a lot better and a lot more normal, and that's really when I noticed the difference, I think.
So what would you say LDN has done for you symptom-wise? What's it helped with?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, I used to get spasms. My bowel used to go into spasm every month, and I would have a week of just absolute pain, and I would usually end up with at least 1 or 2 days off work because I was just in so much pain I couldn't do anything. And now it's sort of, I'll get 1 day or 2 a month possibly when I'll just take an antispasmodic tablet just to sort of relieve that, and so that sort of is completely gone almost. And I just feel so much better. I have a lot more energy. I just feel normal again, because before you get the point where you think, okay, I've done too much, I'm feeling tired, but now that is a lot further along that scale. Before I get to that point, I can do a lot more. I just feel normal again. It's just brilliant.
What would you say to other people who are contemplating trying LDN for MS? Oh,
absolutely, give it a try. I mean, I just think it's sort of, the disease-modifying drugs to me, they just sound so toxic, and I'm putting off sort of going down that road. And I think if you're not ill enough for those, then try the LDN. It makes such a difference. I can't believe how normal I feel. I used to have times when I'd sort of resisted the whole disabled label. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm fine. And now with the LDN, I just feel normal again. I would just say, just give it a try. Give it a few months to get into your system. It really has improved my life, definitely.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us, and long may your success with LDN.